I should have known the night was going to turn ugly when my father asked the caterer to bring out the family gifts before dessert. It was Christmas Eve at my parents' house, and there were 17 of us packed into that over-decorated dining room. My mother had lit every candle she owned. My sister Andrea had lined her kids up in matching velvet outfits like she was staging a department store ad. My wife Lena was helping in the kitchen because she always tried even when I told her she did not have to. And my two kids, Noah and Ellie, were sitting side by side at the far end of the table, trying to look excited and not overwhelmed. My dad loved a performance. He stood near the tree with a stack of red envelopes in one hand and a glass of bourbon in the other, smiling like he had personally invented Christmas. Before we eat dessert, he said, a little something for the grandkids. The room shifted right away. Chairs scraped. Kids sat up straighter. Andrea actually clapped once. I was standing near the entry to the living room, holding my coffee, watching Noah's face. He was 13 then, old enough to notice things, old enough to pretend not to. Ellie was 9, all soft brown curls and cautious eyes. The kind of kid who always said thank you too fast because she was scared she had done something wrong. Dad called out names one by one. Mason, Uribi, Cole, Tessa. Each of Andrea's kids got a brand new iPhone box or a PlayStation gift bag big enough to need both hands. There were squeals, laughter, pictures, my mother dabbing fake tears from the corners of her eyes. Then Dad looked down at the two small envelopes left in his hand. Noah, he said. My son walked over and took his envelope with both hands. He opened it right there because everyone was looking. Inside was a $10 gift card to a sandwich shop, the kind they kept in a plastic rack by the register. Noah blinked once, then smiled. Thanks, Grandpa. Then Dad held out the last thing. Ellie. My daughter stepped forward. What he gave her was not even in an envelope. It was a rolled-up pair of little holiday socks, with the tag half torn off, clearly worn once or at least washed. One cuff had pilled fabric on it, red and green stripes. Cheap. Used. Humiliating. The room did not go silent. That would have required shame. Andre laughed first. Oh my God, Mom, were those in the re-gift bin? My mother covered her mouth like it was all a joke. My daughter looked down at the socks in her hands, then up at me. That was the moment. Not the cheap gift card. Not the lopsided treatment. It was Ellie's face. She did not cry. She did not ask why. She just looked confused, then embarrassed, then careful. Like she was already trying to make it easier on everyone else. My throat closed. Lena started to step forward, but I caught her hand for half a second. Not because I wanted her silent. Because if she spoke first, I was going to lose whatever little control I had left. Dad took a sip of bourbon and shrugged at me. You make 6 figures, Chuck, he said, loud enough for the table to hear. You can cover Christmas for everyone. We figured you'd understand. And that sentence landed right on top of the number that had been sitting in my head all week. $17,300. That was the bill I had already paid. 17 people, prime rib, seafood tower, caterer, bartender, rentals, gifts for the kids, holiday floral delivery. My mother's custom centerpieces, my father's upgraded bourbon package, my sister's last-minute request for the hot chocolate bar, because the children deserve magic. I had paid all of it. I did not say any of that in that moment. I just walked over to Ellie, crouched down, and took the socks from her hands. You do not need to say thank you for that, I told her quietly. Then I stood up, put the socks on the nearest side table, and said, Kids, get your coats. My mother frowned. Don't be dramatic. Noah was already moving. He had learned the weather in that house years before I admitted I had. Ellie slid off her chair and went straight to Lena. Andrea let out a short laugh. Seriously, over gifts. I looked at her. No, not over gifts. I left it there, because if I said the rest, it would have cracked open in front of everyone. The years. The money. The way they always found a way to take and still make my children feel like afterthoughts. We put on our coats in the hallway under that giant framed family photo where my sister's kids were centered and mine were half covered by glare. Dad followed me to the front door. You're really going to throw a fit after everything I put together? He asked. I turned around and stared at him. You put together a bill, I said. I paid it. For the first time all night, his face changed. Then he got hard again. That's what family does. Behind me, I heard Ellie zip her coat. Small sound. Careful sound. I opened the front door. That is what I did. I said. We're leaving now. We drove home in silence, except for the heater rattling and Ellie's quiet breathing from the back seat. Noah stared out the window with his jaw tight. Lena kept one hand on the center console between us, not touching me, just close. I am Chuck. I was 39 that Christmas. I live outside Columbus. I work as a therapist in private practice, mostly trauma and family systems, which sounds funny now because for years I could explain everybody's patterns except my own. I was the person people came to when they wanted calm language for painful things. I was the one with the steady tone, the regulated breathing, the tidy office with the low lamp and the tissue box angled just right. At home, I was a husband and father who kept mistaking endurance for peace. Let me break it down for you. I made good money. Not buy a boat and a lake house money, but steady, real money. Around $185,000 a year before taxes, depending on the practice. More than anyone else in my family. And my father never let me forget it. It had started small. When I was 31, Dad needed help for a month because construction had slowed down. That month turned into quarterly rescue money. Then it was their HVAC unit. Then my mother's dental implants. Then Andrea and her husband were behind on daycare. And my father said I should help because kids should not suffer. I wired $2,400. Then Andrea wanted to put her oldest in travel baseball and could not afford the fees. I paid. Then my parents wanted to do one big family beach week while everyone is still close. I covered the house deposit because Dad said he would pay me back after a truck deal cleared. He never did. The truck. That thing sat like a monument to my stupidity. 2 years before that Christmas, Dad wanted a new pickup. Not needed. Wanted. Big black thing with leather seats and every package on it. He was 68 and still liked to be seen arriving places. His credit was bad because he had refinanced things so many times, the numbers barely meant anything anymore. He called me from the dealership parking lot and said it was just paperwork. I should have said no. Instead, I co-signed. The monthly payment was $3,800 because of the terms, the rolled-in balance from his old truck, the insane interest, the warranty package he insisted he needed, and the fact that he never met a bad financial decision he could not make worse with confidence. He set up the auto pay from his business account. It bounced twice in the first 6 months. Then he asked if I could cover temporarily so his credit would not get hit and he could move money around later. Temporary turned into me carrying the payment almost every month. I knew better. I tell people for a living that repeated rescue becomes a relationship structure. I knew that money can become the language a family uses when it does not know how to speak honestly. I knew all of it. I still did it. Part of me thought I was buying stability. Part of me thought if I helped enough, my kids would be embraced. That my parents would stop acting like Noah was only interesting when he won something, and Ellie was only visible when she was useful, polite, and quiet. There had been smaller moments before Christmas Eve. Noah's 12th birthday when my mother mailed him a card with no cash in it after sending Andrea's oldest a smartwatch the month before. Ellie's school play, when my parents promised to come and then skipped it because Andrea needed help setting up a garage freezer she found on Facebook Marketplace. The family zoo trip where I bought all 12 tickets and later found out my parents had reimbursed Andrea for parking, but not us. Always little enough to question myself. Always enough to leave a mark. And Christmas Eve made it impossible to pretend anymore. That night, after the kids were asleep, Lena and I sat at the kitchen table with the tree lights still on, and the dishes untouched in the sink. She put Ellie's used socks on the table between us like evidence. Like evidence. I need you to say out loud that this was not normal, she said. I stared at the socks for a long time. It was cruel, I said. She nodded. And the bill? I laughed once. Bitter and tired. $17,300. Lena looked at me like she was trying not to break something with her bare hands. You paid $17,300, she said slowly. And our children got a $10 gift card and used socks. Yes. And your father said you should understand because you make 6 figures. Yes. She leaned back in her chair. Then she asked the question no one in my family had ever asked me. What are you going to do? Not what should we say? Not how do we smooth this over? Not whether I thought they meant it. What was I going to do? I slept maybe 2 hours that night. On December 26, my mother texted me a picture of the table setting from Christmas Eve as if she were submitting proof of effort. No message, just the picture. On December 27, Andrea sent, "Don't punish the whole family because Ellie is sensitive." I read that one twice. On December 28, Dad called and left a voicemail. "You embarrassed me in my own house, Charles, after everything I taught you." I did not call back. On December 29, the charge for the Christmas event fully cleared my account. $17,300.21. I took a screenshot and saved it. On December 30, Dad texted me, "Need you to make sure the truck goes through Monday. Big week. No apology. No mention of my kids. No acknowledgement of the money I had already spent. Just the truck. January 2 fell on a Monday that year. The office was closed, but I went in anyway for a couple of hours to catch up on notes and sit somewhere quiet. Around 10:15, I logged into the lender portal from my desk. I remember every stupid detail. The hum of the heater vent, my coffee going cold in a white ceramic mug from a training conference, the fake ficus in the corner that one of my patients once told me looked emotionally unavailable. There it was on the screen. The truck loan. Account ending 4,421. Auto pay scheduled. $3,800. I clicked Manage Payments, then Cancel Recurring Withdrawal. The site asked if I was sure. Yes. Then it asked if I wanted to keep the one-time payment scheduled for that month. No. Then it loaded for a second and gave me a confirmation number. I wrote it down on the yellow legal pad I use for everything important. Then I removed my bank information from the backup funding section. Then I called the lender. I waited through 7 minutes of hold music to speak to a woman named Teresa, who sounded like she had heard every family money story in the world and was done being surprised by any of them. I told her I was a co-signer, not the primary borrower, and I needed to make sure no future payments were drafted from my account. She verified the account, verified my identity, read the disclaimer in a voice so flat it felt almost kind. When she was done, she said, "At this point, the primary borrower is responsible for the January payment. Late notices follow standard timeline if not received." I wrote that down too. "Thank you," I said. Then I hung up and stared at the legal pad. No speech, no announcement, no family group text. Just one clean move. That evening, Lena found me in the den, sitting with the lights off. "Did you do it?" she asked. "Yes." "How do you feel?" I thought about it. Like I finally stopped holding up a roof that was falling on our kids. She came over and kissed my forehead. On Monday, the notice arrived. Dad must have missed the payment window or assumed I had covered it again. Maybe he did not even log in. Maybe men like him never do when they are used to someone else cleaning up the mess. By noon, I had 3 missed calls from him. By 12:26 more. At 1:04, my mother called. At 1:11, Andrea texted, "What did you do?" I still did not answer. The real message came at 2:37. "Dad, the lender sent a default notice. Call me now." I showed the text to Lena. She read it and handed me the phone back without speaking. At 3:02, Andrea sent another one. "You're seriously going to mess with his truck over Christmas? This is low, even for you. Even for me." That line settled something in me. At 4:15, I finally replied. "Not to all of them, just to my father. I'm no longer funding expenses for people who humiliate my children." He called before the typing bubble could disappear. I let it ring out. Then he sent a voice message. "This is ridiculous. That has nothing to do with the loan. It had everything to do with the loan. Or rather, it had everything to do with the structure behind the loan. The assumption, the permanent open hand, the belief that my role in the family was to absorb impact and smile about it. The missed calls kept coming all week. My mother switched tactics first. She left a voicemail crying about stress, blood pressure, and how hard it had been to host so many people. Andrea went angry, called me petty, vindictive, said I was punishing her kids too, because now Dad was in a foul mood and ruining the week for everyone. My father tried authority, then guilt, then insult. At one point he texted, "A therapist of all people should know better than to tear apart his own family." I stared at that one, so long I almost laughed. By Thursday they showed up. I came home from the office a little after 5 and saw Dad's truck in my driveway, parked crooked across the edge of the lawn. Like the grass personally owed him money. My mother was in the passenger seat. Andrea's SUV was behind them. Lena saw them through the front window and came to the door before I had my key out. "You do not have to let them in," she said. I nodded. But Noah had already looked up from the living room. Ellie too. I was done having these things happen around my kids without naming them. So I opened the front door and stepped outside, then closed it behind me. Cold January air. Bare trees. My father standing there in a work jacket he only wore when he wanted to look like a man under pressure. "What is wrong with you?" he said before I got to the porch steps. My mother hissed his name like she was performing civility. I stayed on the top step. "You can talk from there." Andrea folded her arms. "So now we're strangers?" I looked at her. "You made my daughter feel like one in your parents' house." My mother did that face she always did when confronted with a plain fact. Tight mouth, hurt eyes, immediate reroute. "This is about gifts still?" she asked. No, I said. This is about a pattern. Dad cut in. I need that payment handled. There it was. Straight to the point. I almost respected it for being honest in its own ugly way. No, I said. He took one step toward the porch. You co-signed, and I removed my account. You were notified. His face went red so fast it looked painful. You don't do this to family. I said it before I could soften it. I'm not your backup bank. Nobody moved. Andrea stared at me. My mother actually inhaled, like I had slapped someone. Dad pointed at the house. After all we've done for you, I do not know why that line still stings when I have heard versions of it my whole life. Maybe because it always came after an invoice, never after love. I kept my voice even. You are off my accounts, off my automatic payments, off my emergency list. I will not fund a family my kids are not fully part of. My mother's eyes filled with tears on cue. How can you say that after Christmas dinner? I laughed then. I really did. After Christmas dinner, I said, you gave my son $10 and my daughter used socks after I paid $17,300 for 17 people. Andrea tried to interrupt. No one asked you to keep score. Dad snapped, that's enough. But I was done shrinking my own sentences to make room for theirs. Yes, I said, I am keeping score now. Because you always were. Silence. Not movie silence. Real silence. The kind where a dog barks 2 houses down and somebody's wind chime knocks lightly against metal and you realize nobody has a clean way out of the truth. Then my mother did what she always did when guilt failed. She reached for Lena. This is her, she said quietly, like some final diagnosis. Ever since you married her, you've changed. The front door opened behind me. Lena stepped out onto the porch with Ellie tucked behind her and Noah right beside them. My son spoke before I could. No, Noah said. He changed when he got tired of you being mean to Ellie. My mother actually looked startled, like children were not supposed to become witnesses. Ellie pressed one hand into Lena's sleeve and stayed quiet, but she did not hide. That mattered to me more than anything. Dad muttered, this is unbelievable. No, I said, this is late. Then I opened the front door wider and looked at my children. Inside, I said gently. They went in. I looked back at my parents and sister. This conversation is over. Do not come here to discuss money again. Dad stood there for another second, maybe waiting for me to crack, maybe still assuming there was a number that would open me back up. There wasn't. He turned first. My mother followed, crying now in earnest. Andrea lingered just long enough to spit, you'll regret this. Maybe. But not in the way she meant. The lender call started after that. Not to me, to him. Then to both of us, technically, because that is how co-signing works. I was not magically free of the obligation. I knew that. I dealt with it the proper way through legal channels and documentation, and eventually I protected my credit, but the shock for him was immediate. He had to move money, sell equipment, delay other bills, face consequences with his own name on them for once. That was the part he could not forgive. Not that I had hurt him. That I had stopped cushioning him. The family split quietly after that. Anthony's texted me one night, you should have done this years ago. My cousin Mark sent Noah a basketball gift card for $100 and mailed Ellie a watercolor set with her name on the box. Andrea posted vague quotes online about betrayal and arrogance, and people who forget where they came from. I muted her. My mother sent one long email saying Christmas had been misunderstood, and the socks had been part of a playful family tradition. I did not answer because there had never been any such tradition, unless humiliation counted. My father sent exactly one more message 3 weeks later. Hope the principal was worth it. I read it in the kitchen while Ellie was doing math homework at the table and Noah was microwaving pizza rolls. Then I deleted it, because by then I knew something he did not. It had been worth it the second my daughter stopped flinching when family events were mentioned. That first Christmas after the cutoff, we stayed home. No rented chairs. No floral centerpieces. No bourbon package. No invoices disguised as tradition. We made cinnamon rolls from a tube because Ellie liked the kind with too much icing. Noah burned the first batch of bacon and laughed instead of apologizing. Lena put on old soul music while I made coffee in my slippers. Around 10, Mark and his wife came by with their kids. Then Aunt Denise. Then, unexpectedly, my mother's younger sister, who had not spoken against my parents in 40 years, but arrived carrying a pie and a quiet expression that told me enough. No one asked for money. No one ranked children. No one performed gratitude, like theater. Ellie sat on the rug in front of the tree with her new sketch markers and drew everybody's mugs lined up on the coffee table. Noah spent an hour teaching his younger cousin a card game and did not once look over his shoulder to see who was being favored. At one point, I walked into the dining room and stopped. There were two empty chairs at the far end of the table, not set on purpose, just unused. And still, they felt symbolic. All those years, I had tried to buy my way into a softer version of my own family. All those transfers, checks, auto pays, rescue wires, deposits, and quiet bailouts. I thought money kept me connected. I thought generosity would translate. I thought if I made myself useful enough, my children would be safe there. But money had not made us belong. It had only made me expensive to lose. That night, after everyone left, Ellie handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a drawing of our table, uneven chairs, muffin crumbs, Lena laughing with her hand over her mouth, Noah dealing cards, me at the stove in striped pajama pants, holding a spatula. At the top she had written, in careful block letters, "This one felt like Christmas." I put that drawing in my desk drawer at the office for a while. Then I framed it. It hangs there now where I can see it between sessions. Not because I need a reminder that my parents failed. Because I need a reminder that boundaries are not punishments. They are instructions. They tell people where love can live and where it cannot survive. My father still has his truck, by the way. Smaller now. Used. Less shiny, he had to trade down. Nobody starved, nobody froze. The sky did not fall because I stopped being the family wallet. That may be the clearest lesson of all. People who depend on your silence will call your boundary cruelty. People who benefited from your overgiving will call your balance betrayal. And children notice everything. They notice who gets the big boxes and who gets the leftovers. They notice who is laughed with and who is laughed at. They notice whether their parent tells the truth about what just happened. I spent years thinking protection meant smoothing things over. It did not. Protection meant letting my kids see that love without respect is not something we keep funding. That Christmas cost me $17,300. It bought me one thing worth having. The end of pretending.